11. Welcome to Train Pull Round 2, Electric Boogaloo, in which we measure the tractive effort and effective power of a variety of our 1 to 48 scale trains. In 2015, we did a similar series of tests, hence the Round 2, and posted our findings on the Eurobricks forum. You can find a link in the video description. We tested the trains using a jig very similar to the ones we used for testing individual motors. We want to see how much weight an engine can pull and how quickly it can pull it. Weights consisted of coins, and we pulled them out of a stairwell while measuring the speed of the train. This chart summarizes all of our tests. I will give a brief description of each locomotive and talk about the result. Our first engine is the diminutive GE 23-ton Boxcab, which featured in a 2015 video. Unique even among our weirder trains, it runs off just a micromotor and a battery box with no power functions controls. As the smallest and lightest locomotive with the weakest motor, it obviously fared the worst in this test, barely pulling 20 grams and generating 1,000th of a watt with its 207 gram weight. The Glaskasten is another simple battery box and motor combination, previously using the micromotor as shown in a 2016 video. It currently uses the 9-volt geared motor and medium drivers coated in silicone caulk. It pulled 50 grams and generated 0.05 watts from its 258 gram weight. It could not pull 70 grams, about a quarter of its weight, probably limited by the unusual tiring. The 7722 is neither 1/48 scale nor a Mach, but this 4.5 volt train sets a good benchmark with its thick tires and high relative weight. The 278 gram engine, the weight of the battery car is not included, barely managed to pull 120 grams and generated 0.15 watts. Pulling half its weight is very impressive. This time, the tires probably helped the locomotive rather than hurt it. The S100 is another 4.5 volt engine, but it uses the 4.5 volt Technic motor rather than the 4.5 volt train motor. Similarly, it needs the discrete battery car, but dissimilarly, it rides on official large drivers with skinny tires. Again, the latter seems to make a big difference. The 288 gram S100 had roughly half the tractive effort of the 7722 and subsequently generated about half the power. The BR24 is powered by an M motor with standard power functions controls. Like the two previous machines, the batteries reside inside the tender and do not contribute to adhesion. The engine itself weighs 342 grams and can pull 100 grams while generating 0.18 watts. Compared to the S100, the BR24 pulls a larger percent of its weight, most likely again due to thicker tires. The Model 40 is perhaps half the volume of the BR24, but it nonetheless weighs more thanks to the onboard battery box. Still, at 366 grams, it could only pull 80 grams, though it generated 0.2 watts at that load. Tire quality, yet again, most likely accounts for the poorer pulling performance, but the lighter load allows the motor to run closer to its max power. The Pennsylvania B1 is starting to be one of the heavier locomotives, but also one of the least powerful. Nonetheless, with aggressive reduction, The 9-volt geared motor allows the engine to pull 140 grams with its 470 grams of weight while generating just 0.1 watts of power. The high efficiency of this motor also means that the engine can brake on a PF stop command, something we had not seen before. The H1044 represents a generic double 9-volt train motor unit, a common setup for those still running 9-volt trains. At 542 grams, this is the lightest engine in our testing that can brake couplings, though it managed to pull 180 grams with the help of a supermagnet. It generated 0.5 watts of power, though this is actually most likely a limitation of the V2 receiver rather than the motors themselves. The Canadian National X10A is a heavy engine that can't pull anything due to poor weight distribution. I covered this in its video. The 648-gram locomotive could only pull 70 grams, and wheel slip at that load reduced the effective power to just 0.8 watts. With 50 grams of additional weight placed in the front of the boiler, the X10 pulled 20 more grams and increased its 70-gram pulling power to 0.17 watts. 37. The Caltrain MP15DC has shown up time and time again in the background of other videos, but it does not have a dedicated video yet. I will only say that it is fairly heavy for its size, though not particularly powerful. The 730-gram engine pulled 220 grams, a little less than a third of its weight, while generating 0.25 watts of power. The Caltrain MP36PH is a new model that also does not have its own video. This is a huge and heavy engine with poor weight distribution, though for once the grip of the wheels may not be limiting the tractive effort. For a variety of reasons, the 910-gram engine could only pull 70 grams, though it generated 0.43 watts in the process. Finally, the U30B is one of the oldest engines in this test and also the absolute heaviest. I built this 1,040-gram locomotive with the express purpose of being a heavy hauler, and it beats anything else here by a pretty good margin. With its two ungeared 9-volt motors, the engine can pull nearly 300 grams, though wheel slip at that load means it generates more power at about 250 grams. 33. Finally, what can you take away from this data? For most units, the weight of the locomotive and the properties of the tires limit the pulling performance more than the torque of the motor. Furthermore, the stock magnets come apart at about 180 grams, so there is no reason to build for more than that without strengthening the couplers. All of the PF motors are quite capable of moving this load, provided enough weight and a reasonable drivetrain. Adding more motors is generally unnecessary unless you want to move a heavy train very fast. On that note, this is the end of the video, so have a nice day.
Alright, so it will pull 180, very slowly. I think you put the tractor in the middle, you'll get better results. Is this something you want to bother doing?
Well, since you're doing that, yes, I'll bother doing it.
It's not that hard, I guess.
Yeah. I need to read